नमस्कार, मैं हूं अनामिका सिंह. I am a senior research fellow from Regional Institute of Education, Mysuru. We have met again here in this video to prepare for our seated examination for 2026. So in this particular session, we will be discussing seated paper 2 social science portion, and we will see previous year questions from December 2024. So this particular question paper will be divided into two parts, part 1 and part 2 for our discussion. So in the first part, the first question in front of us is this. Which of the following kingdoms was established by Kadamba Mayurashtraman? So let us look at the options: Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka, Rajasthan and Gujarat. So this particular kingdom was established by, so in that period of time it was called as Banasvi. So in today's time it is referred to as Karnataka. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following statements is or are correct about planets? So this is from geography portion. Let us look at the options. They are lit by the light of the stars. They are made up of only rocks. And the third statement is all planets have their moons. So these are the three statements that are given about the planets. So now let us see which of these statements are correct. So after you have read it and decided which statement is correct, let us see the options. All A, B and C, all the three statements are correct. Only statement A is correct. Only A and B statement is correct, and only B and C statements are correct. So as we have read the statements, we realize that all planets do not have their own moons. They are not just made up of only rocks. So the right answer here will be option 2, only A. Let us look at the next question. The most important factor that influences the distribution of temperature on Earth is. So the Earth's temperature, one of the factors or the most important factors because of which the temperature is distributed in a certain way over the Earth's surface. Let us look at the option. Crowded high-rise buildings, insolation or incoming solar radiation. Third is seasons. And the fourth option, asphalt of roads. So when you look at the four options, very clearly we know the second option is the right answer here, because the solar radiation and the insolation because of it will control the temperature of Earth's surface. So option 2 is the correct answer. Next question. Consider the following statements on non-Brahman movement and choose the valid option. Now let us see what the statements are. We have also discussed on non-Brahman movement in 2026 previous year question papers in the previous sessions on social science PYQs. So this becomes an important topic when it comes to preparation for our seated examination. So let us look at the statements given here. The first statement. The movement came from non-Brahmin castes that had acquired access to education. The movement argued that the Aryans were the indigenous people. And third statement, the movement came from non-Brahmin castes with wealth and influence. So these are the three statements. Clearly, if you remember from our previous discussions, the right answer here will remove only one statement, that is the statement B. So if we remove B, we have option 2 as a correct answer, which means the statement A and statement C are valid. Next question. Who among the following worked with leather workers in central India and also started the Satnami movement? So this is a question related to which particular freedom fighter or which particular leader propagated or have worked in order to bring in certain movements in our country. So the right answer here is Ghasidas. So Guru Ghasidas, he worked with leather workers in central India and also started the Satnami movement. So try to remember this, because these are all remembering based questions which are also important when it comes to the seated exam. Let us see the next question. What type of winds are land and sea breeze? So this question will also be covered in EVS portion of paper 1, but this is also part of our geography. So let us see the options: permanent winds, cyclones, local winds and seasonal winds. So the four options are here in front of us, and sea breeze and land breeze are basically local winds, and they are caused by the difference in temperature at the surface of the sea and also the land. So in the coastal regions this is observed. This will lead to change in the temperature. So the right option here is option 3, local winds. So the next question is, while teaching in a social science class, a student asks you, how can we measure the distance between longitudes on equator? What answer will be correct for such calculation? So how do we calculate it? What we need to remember here is that the equator, it measures to almost 40,000, and each latitude, the total longitudes that are present are 360. So when you divide that, it will come around to 111 kilometers per degree or per longitude. So the correct answer here will be by dividing the total length of equator with 360. Moving on to the next question, which of the following is the correct sequence of rock cycle? The first option, so rock cycle is also another important concept. Let us look at the options: igneous rocks, magma and metamorphic rock, sedimentary rock, metamorphic rock and then magma, igneous rocks, metamorphic rock, sedimentary rock, magma, metamorphic rock and sedimentary rock. So this particular rock cycle, it is a cyclic process, so it keeps on going. So how do we identify here? We need to remember that magma turns into igneous rocks, and also after the sedimentary rocks, which rocks are formed. So if you try to just pinpoint one of the steps of this rock cycle, you will be able to understand which is the correct answer here. That is option 2, sedimentary rock, metamorphic rock and magma. Moving on to the next question. Match the following and choose the appropriate option. So look at the options that are there in front of us, and we need to match it with the correct one. So a punch marked coin. So what it is like, we need to see in the B column. Then northern black polished ware, amphorae and Aretine ware. So in this two option B, like the statement B and D, we need to match it, and we need to pick up the keyword here, which is ware. So it will be related to something of pottery. So the first is punch marked coins. So these are the coins which are stamped with symbols using dies. The northern black polished ware are extremely fine pottery, and the amphorae and Aretine ware will go for the other two options. So the right answer here will be option 3, punch marked coins with stamped with symbols using dies. Northern black polished ware will be extremely fine pottery, and amphorae will be tall double handled jars, and Aretine ware will be the stamped glazed pottery. So this is how we understand this. This is something that you need to remember what these ancient artifacts are about. So let us move on to the next question. Read the statements A and R carefully and choose the correct option. Using resources carefully and giving them time to get renewed is called resource conservation. This statement is correct. That is the definition of resource conservation. Then let us look at the R statement, which is balancing the need to use resources and also conserve them for future is called sustainable development. So this is also true. Both of these statements are true, but it does not explain the first statement. Let us move on to the next question. Which one of the following is incorrect? So here they have given certain events in the history and the time or the year that it has occurred. Let us see which of it is incorrect. So the dissatisfaction with British rule intensified in 1870s and 1880s. Next is the Arms Act was passed in 1878, disallowing Indians from possessing arms. The third one, the Vernacular Press Act was passed in 1880 to support the government. And Option 4 is in 1883 there was a furore over the attempt by the government to introduce the Ilbert Bill. So the right answer here is, that is third option. The Vernacular Press Act was not passed in 1880, it was in 1878. Moving on to the next one. Consider the following statements about grasslands and choose the correct option. So grasslands is a concept in our geography, and we have seen that if we analyze the question papers, a lot of questions have come from this part. Let us look at the statements here. Climate plays an important role in the formation of grasslands. Statement B. Annual rainfall is moderate in prairies while wells could face drought in winter months. Third is the vegetation cover is sparse in wells. And statement D. Wells lie in the northern hemisphere while prairies lie in the southern hemisphere. So if you remember the correct location or the location distribution in the grasslands, you will be able to answer this question very easily. All the other statements are correct, but statement D is incorrect. So the right option here would be option 2. Only A, B and C are correct. Now let us see the next question. According to the Uttarameru inscription, who could become a member of a sabha? So this particular inscription, it has spoken about who can become, what are the qualification needed, or what are some of the things that should be met before someone can become part of the sabha. So let us look at the statements. The owners of land from which land revenue is collected. Statement B. They should be between 25 and 70 years of age. Statement C. They should have their own houses. And statement D. They should have knowledge of the Vedas. So the Uttaramerur inscription, it has spoken about various conditions that should be met for someone to become the member of Sabha. So this is also an important topic. So when you look at what all condition it has given, there is one condition which is not correct here. The right age group that they have mentioned here is not correct. So 25 and 70 years is not, it is almost around 35 and 70 years of age. So the right answer here will be option 1, only A, C and D. Moving on to the next question. Dash refers to a situation where a person does not have resources and opportunities that are available to other persons. This is also a repeated question. So this is a repeated question in our seated examination. So let us look at the option. The first one is disposition. Option 2, hierarchy. Option 3, diversification. And option 4, inequality. So the right answer here is inequality. Inequality refers to a situation where a person does not have resources and opportunities that are available to other people or a different person. Let us look at the next question. Which of the following are correctly matched? So they have spoken about agricultural practices and given the word there, keyword there, and then described it on this side. So now let us try to see which of this is correctly matched. The first one is subsistence farming, practice to meet the needs of farmers' own family. Intensive subsistence farming or agriculture, prevalent in the thickly populated areas. And then the C one is shifting cultivation. People and animals move from place to place. So if you try to remember the concept of various types of farmings that are present, this is a topic from our geography. So you will be easily able to tell which of this is not correctly described. So let us look at the option. Option 1, all A, B and C are correctly matched. Option 2, A and B are correctly matched. Option 3, B and C, and option 4, A and C. So when you look at the descriptions given, one of it is wrong, which is shifting cultivation. People and animals move from place to place. This is more about how the nomadic movement was happening, or the nomads were having or trying to cultivate. So the right answer here will be only A and B statements are correct, which is the option 2. Moving on to the next question. read the statements A and R and choose the appropriate option. The assertion is Rajaram Mohan Roy founded a reform association known as the Brahma Sabha in Kolkata. And the reason, he felt that changes were necessary in society and unjust practices needed to be done away with. So Rajaram Mohan Roy, who is a social reformer and the founder of Brahma Sabha, why he began or why did he bring in Brahma Sabha? So let us look at the options. Both A and R are false. Both A and R are true, and R is the correct explanation of A. Both A and R are true, but R is not the correct explanation of A. A is true, but R is false. The right answer here is both of these statements are true, and the reason why he started it is also given correctly here. So the explanation is also correct. Let us see the next question. Match the following and choose the appropriate options. So here they have given certain terminologies or certain nomenclatures, and we have to tell who were these people. So the Grihapatis, Shrenis, Adimai, Arikamedu. So the Grihapatis were whom, the Shrenis were which category of people, and what was their occupation. So based on that, we need to do the match the following here. So the options or the statements in B are landless laborers, independent farmers, coastal settlements, and craft persons. So the Shrenis were craft persons. Let us see B4. So these kind of questions, it is best to answer by identifying which one you know best. So you can choose that one and based on that try to eliminate. So B I know is related to craft persons. So B4, it is there in option 1 and also in option 4. So now next, Grihapatis. Grihapatis were basically the independent farmers. So A2, it is there only in the first option. So the right answer here is option 1. The Grihapatis are the independent farmers, the Shrenis are the craft persons, the Adimai were the landless laborers, and the Arikmedu were the coastal settlement. Now let us see the next question. World Environment Day is celebrated every year on which of the following days? So this is a very simple question. It was very recently celebrated. So the right answer here is 5th June. The World Environment Day is celebrated every year on 5th of June. Let us look at the next question. Which of the following is true about common property resources? So this is about common property resources. So the statements are, these are owned by government, these are owned by private companies, and these are owned by communities. So the options are only A and C. Second one is only A and B. Option 3 is only B, and option 4 only B and C. So when you talk about government property, it is governed by someone, but it can be used by everyone present in the community, and it will not be owned by a private company. So the right answer here, or the statement which is false and we can remove, is statement B. So the first option, only A and C statements about the common property resources, is correct. Moving on to the next question. Maps can be best used for. So maps are teaching learning resources when it comes to taking classes and having discussions in our social science classrooms. So these maps can be best used for marking places where people have lived at different points in history, arranging sequence of events in history, elaborating on the most important events in history, and studying lives of people living in different times in a logical sequence. So will we be able to study about the lives of people in different times and also in the logical manner using maps? That is not the right way to use map. Elaborating on the most important events in history. Will map help us to do that? The next one is arranging sequence of events in history. This is also like trying to create a timeline. So the right answer here will be, which is very direct option, marking places where people have lived at different points in history. So option 1 is the correct answer. The next question is, Which of the following statements are true about the development of cotton industries in the late 18th and early 19th century of colonized India? So, during the British rule, so the development of cotton industries, what are the statements that are given here, and which of these statements are true of what was actually happening in this particular time? So this is specifically to development of cotton industries. So let us look at the statements. Statement A, Indian textile industries had to compete with British textiles in the European and American markets. The second one, British market was now available for Indian textiles. Option C, exporting textile goods to England became increasingly difficult. And option D, Bengal weavers were worst hit as English and European companies stopped buying Indian textiles. So, if we try to remember what were the various situations like when the development of cotton industries began in the British rule or in the colonized India, so the basically what was happening is our Indian weavers were not able to do mass production, but this particular cotton industry, it was able to produce in bulk the various material, and because of which the Indian textiles were greatly affected, and also the Bengal weavers were hit worst. So because of that, some of these statements are correct, but one of these statement is wrong. That is, British market was now available for Indian textiles after the Britishers and the development of the cotton industries. The tariff rates and everything was increased, which was making it more and more difficult for us to export from India. And that is why statements A, C and D truly represent of what was happening at that time, and the statement B is false. Moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements A and R and choose the correct option. The prairies are also known as the granaries of the world. The statement is true. Then the reason is scientific methods of cultivation and use of tractors, harvester combines has made South Africa a surplus food producers. So let us look at the options that are given here. Both A and R are false. Both A and R are true, and R is the correct explanation of A. Both A and R are true, but R is not the correct explanation of A. A is true, but R is false. So the right answer here is A is true, but R is false. The prairies are known as the granaries of the world, and they are called so because they have a huge amount of wheat production there. Let us now look at the next question. Diversity came with something new and different due to. So the diversity, it comes with something new and different because of what? Because of which reason? So let us look at the options here. The homogeneous population, intermixing of cultures, genetic composition, similarities and identical traits. So here if you look at the options, we can easily make out there is only one option which is respecting diversity or which can lead to something new and different. All the other three options are talking more or less about the homogeneity or similarities, identical traits. So the right answer here is intermixing of culture, that is option B. Let us see the next question now. Reservation of seats in legislation and in government jobs was granted by the Indian Constitution to. The first statement is compensate for low grades and marks scored in school and universities because of which people were not able to compete. Then statement B, compensate for years of historical suppression and educational deprivation. And option C, like the statement C, appease people for political support and rally as vote banks. So reservation basically came in legislation and also in the government jobs. It was done by the Indian Constitution in order to address the difficulties or years long historical suppression that some of the minorities and the castes have faced. So because of this oppression and the inequalities and the kind of treatment that they were receiving, in order to help them and in order to uplift them, this has come into being. So this is basically to compensate for years of historical suppression and educational deprivation. So the right answer or the right option here will be only B. So only B is the reason as to why reservation was brought in. Let us now look at the next question. Read the following statements A and R considering the art forms in colonial India. The assertion is colonial rule introduced several new art forms, styles and techniques. And the reason is these were creatively adapted by Indian artists for local patterns and markets. Both of these statements are true because the colonial rule did introduce several new art forms and styles and techniques of painting or creating new artistic things. So these were creatively adapted by our Indian artist and then it was sold in our Indian market. So the right answer here is both A and R are true and R is the correct explanation of A. So in the seated answer key, they have given two. That reason is also correct explanation for assertion A. We may have our own doubts, but we have to go with the seated answer key. So that is the option 2. I am not sure if this is a correct explanation for the assertion given here, but according to the answer key that was published on the CTET's official website, option 2 is the correct answer. So R is the correct explanation of A. Moving on to the next question. Neolithic sites are different than Paleolithic sites because of the following. So the statements are mortars and pestles were used for grinding grains. So you have to focus that we are talking about the Neolithic sites, how they are different from Paleolithic sites. So the second statements, pots were used for cooking food. The third one is cloth was woven using different kinds of material. And the fourth one is use of stone tools began. So if you look at all of this, we know that the Neolithics were far more ahead of the Paleolithic sites and how they were living. So one of these options is still talking about the Stone Age. So that is the statement 4. So if you try to eliminate that, we will have the right answer here with us and all the other 3 statements are correct. So the right answer here is option 3. The statement 1, 2 and 3 are correct. Let us move on to the next one. Read the given assertion and reason statements and choose the appropriate option here. The assertion is by the late 19th century, the craft of iron smelting declined and in most villages furnaces fell into disuse. The reason for this is the iron smelters had to pay a very high tax to the forest department that had reduced their income. Now let us look at the options that are there in front of us. Both A and R are false. Both A and R are true and R is the correct explanation of A. Both A and R are true but R is not the correct explanation of A. And option 4, A is true but R is false. So if you look at both of these statements, both the statements are correct and the R is the correct explanation of A. So they had reduced practicing it or the craft of iron smelting had reduced. It was because the Britishers had taken over and brought in the various rules and regulation when it came to the use of forest. So all the villagers, they were affected and because of this their income had reduced. So the iron smelters had to pay a huge amount of tax in order to take resources, which led to a reduced income and thereby slowly there was a decline in craft of iron smelting. So let us move on to the next question. Who among the following are elected members of the local government? So among the 4 that we have in front of us, which of them are elected members and which one is not an elected member will help us to identify the correct answer here. So ward member, panchayat president, secretary, ward councillor. if you see here, the secretary is not elected member of the local governments. So the right answer here is A, B and D. The ward member, the panchayat president and the ward councillor, these people are elected in the local governments. Let us move on to the next question. On which of the following dates Gandhiji asked the Indian people to observe a day of non-violent opposition to the Rowlatt Act? So this particular act that was brought in by the Britishers, in order to condone it or in order to show their dissatisfaction towards it, Gandhiji has asked all the Indians to observe a day of non-violent opposition. So which day it was? The right answer here is 6th April 1990. So on this particular day, Gandhiji had asked all the Indians to observe a non-violent opposition. So these are some of the important dates from the 1857 revolt. So we should be able to remember some of these important dates. Moving on to the next question. When it is 1 p.m. at Greenwich, what time will it be at 60 degree west and 60 degrees east respectively? So this question is from geography and this requires some amount of calculation. So you can see what they have asked is what time will it be at 60 degrees west and 60 degrees east if it is 1 p.m. at Greenwich. So in order to calculate this, here is a small description on what we can understand here. So the earth rotates 360 degrees in 24 hours. Therefore, it will rotate around 15 degrees in 1 hour. So 60 degree would mean that 60 divided by 15, which is coming to 4 hours. So if you apply the longitude rule, which means we need to add in the east and we need to subtract in the west. So given time at Greenwich is 1 p.m. So when it is about 60 degree west, we will subtract 4 hours, which is 1 p.m. minus 4 hours is 9 a.m. And at 60 degree east, we will add the 4 hours. 1 p.m. plus 4 is equals to the 5 p.m. So therefore, it will be 60 degree west to 9 a.m. and 60 degree east at 5 p.m. So the right option here will be option 3. So these were some of the questions that have come in the PYQ year of 2024 December CTET examination. So we have discussed a varied amount of questions and also various concepts which become important when it comes to the CTET examination. So some of the formulas that we discussed and how to calculate the time or the degree. So try to remember all of this. We will meet in the next session and also discuss some more PYQs as a continuation of this particular session. Thank you.